Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at celebrating small wins. We've got this great article from Harvard Summer School, and I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's a topic that a lot of people might think is very simple on the surface, but once you really get into it,
Yeah?
it's pretty profound.
There's so much there, and it's not just about giving yourself a pat on the back. It actually ties into some really cool stuff with psychology and motivation and goals and even team dynamics.
Definitely. So much research behind it.
Yeah.
It's not, just about feeling good. But like I said, the effects are much more significant than just a surface level feel good type of thing.
Yeah. And I love that, we're starting with this, proverb. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Yeah.
Because so often, when we were thinking about our goals and those big things that we want to achieve, it does feel like that 1,000-mile trek, Like if you're trying to switch careers or learn a new language or,
Yeah.
finally get in shape. Like it's daunting.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly where this idea of small wins comes in. The article defines small wins as any action, no matter how small, that moves you toward a larger goal. What's cool is the way these small actions can build on each other.
Almost like they're priming you for success.
Exactly. It's all about momentum, reducing that fear of failure, and ultimately giving you a better shot at achieving what you set out to do. Like, you ever notice how starting with a small, manageable task can make a larger project feel less intimidating?
Totally. It's like as soon as you get that first win under your belt,
Yeah.
it's like suddenly the rest of it doesn't seem quite so impossible. Like you've proven to yourself that you can do it.
Exactly. And that change in your mindset is really powerful. The article uses specific examples like health goals, like just taking a walk, choosing a healthy meal instead of takeout, or finally going to the gym after work. I mean, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
So easy to get discouraged when you're not seeing those big changes right away.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I remember when I was training for my first half marathon.
There you go. You're already connecting it to your own life. And that's the key here. The article really stresses that you have to acknowledge and celebrate those small victories, even if they seem really small at the time.
Because you're setting yourself up for those bigger things down the road. They're like the foundation you're building on.
Yeah, exactly. They're reinforcing positive behaviors and helping you develop those habits and the mindset to reach that big goal. You're not pretending the big picture isn't hard, but you're recognizing that real progress comes from a bunch of smaller achievements.
So it's not just about like, oh, this feels good.
Yeah.
It's actually like you're rewiring your brain.
Yeah, for sure. The article goes into some of the real benefits of celebrating these small wins. Like, personally, it's such a mood booster. It can help you stay motivated when things get tough, which will definitely happen when you're trying to do something hard.
And it's not just about staying positive,
Hmm.
but it's about building real confidence. It's not just like hoping you can achieve your goals.
Oh,
You're starting to actually believe it because you're seeing the evidence.
that's such a great point. It's about that transition from self-doubt to self-efficacy. When you start to see yourself as someone who can do things, it's incredibly empowering.
Like when you finally learn that new skill, whether it's coding or cooking or even parallel parking, it's like, hey, I can do this.
And that sense of accomplishment makes you want to keep learning and growing.
So it's like a positive feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Celebrating small wins leads to more confidence, which motivates you to do even more, which creates more opportunities for celebration.
Exactly. And the coolest thing is this isn't just some fluffy feel-good concept. It's real science. When we achieve something, even a little thing, our brains release dopamine.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Like our brains are giving us a little pat on the back saying, good job, keep it up.
And that feeling of reward makes you want to keep doing the thing that got you there. So by celebrating those wins, we're basically like hacking our brains to make those positive habits and stay motivated.
I love that. So it's not just about willpower or forcing yourself to do things you don't enjoy. It's about setting yourself up to succeed using your brain's own reward system.
Yeah.
Okay, but how do we actually put this into practice? What can people actually do?
Well, that's where these practical tips from the Harvard article come in. They give all sorts of ways to acknowledge and celebrate small wins. And what I really like is that they emphasize that there's not one right way to do it. It's all about finding what works for you and for your goals.
Okay, so what are some of the things they talk about?
One of the easiest things, but people don't always do it, is just track your progress, like using a journal or a spreadsheet or an app, or even just like a to-do list. Seeing those check marks can be really satisfying.
Oh, yeah, I totally get that. It's like so gratifying to cross things off a list. It's like you can see what you've done.
For sure. And that sense of progress, even if it seems small, can really motivate you. It reinforces the feeling that you're moving forward, even if it's just one tiny step at a time.
Like putting together a puzzle, right? Each piece might not seem like much on its own, but then when you get them all together, you've created something amazing.
Exactly. And just like with that puzzle, celebrating each piece you put in makes the whole process more fun and rewarding. It's not just about the final product, but enjoying the journey as you go.
And, speaking of enjoying the journey, the article talks about giving yourself little rewards along the way.
Right. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It's about those little things that make you happy and doing them as part of your celebration. Maybe it's a fancy coffee after a good morning, or listening to your favorite podcast, or spending time on a hobby you love.
Or even just taking a minute to yourself to appreciate what you've done and how far you've come.
Mm,
It's all about remembering that taking care of yourself is part of the process.
absolutely. It's about creating a way to reach your goals that you can keep up. And that means being kind to yourself and celebrating those wins as you go.
Okay, so we've talked about tracking progress and giving ourselves little rewards.
Hmm.
What are some other things we can do to make the most of those small wins?
Well, this might sound a little weird, but sometimes sharing your wins with others can actually make them even more powerful.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more.
When you tell other people what you've accomplished, even if it seems small, it makes you accountable and you get to share in the good vibes with people who support you. And it might even inspire them to celebrate their wins too.
That's a great point. It's like you're creating this ripple effect of motivation and encouragement.
Exactly. You're making a whole culture of celebration where everyone feels like they can talk about their progress and support each other. And this is really important when you're working on a team.
Right. Because when you celebrate together as a team, it's not just good for morale, but it also makes you feel more connected and like you're working together toward the same thing.
Yeah, and that feeling of being united can be really strong. It can
Mhm.
help you get through challenges, stay motivated, and actually achieve more together.
So celebrating small wins isn't just about personal success. It's also a great way to build better teams. I love how this one simple idea can have such a big impact.
Me too. And the article mentions another important point, setting milestones. When you break down a big goal into smaller, more manageable chunks, it makes the whole thing feel less overwhelming.
Right. Like you're making mini goals inside the bigger goal, and that gives you more chances to celebrate along the way.
Exactly. It also helps you stay focused.
Yeah.
When you have those milestones to guide you, it's easier to see how much progress you're making and to stay motivated even when it's hard.
It's like those mile markers you see on a road trip. They make the whole thing feel less scary, and you feel good every time you pass one.
That's a great analogy. It's all about breaking up the journey into smaller, easier to handle parts.
Okay, so we've got tracking progress, rewarding ourselves, sharing our wins, and setting milestones. Anything else in the article's toolbox for getting the most out of those small wins?
They also say it's really important to remember that making progress is more important than being perfect.
Oh, that's so true. It's so easy to get caught up in trying to do everything perfectly, but that can actually stop you from getting anything done.
Right. It's about being okay with imperfections and celebrating the effort and the progress you're making, even if it's not always perfect.
Like they say, done is better than perfect.
Definitely. Especially when it comes to celebrating those small wins. You don't have to wait until you've done something perfectly to acknowledge your hard work.
Right. Every step forward, even a small one, is worth celebrating.
Exactly. And that celebration can be as simple as thinking, good job, or as big as having a dance party. It's all about what works for you and making it part of your routine.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here, but before we get too much further into like how to do all of this, I think it's important to talk about why it works. I mean, there has to be more to it than just that dopamine rush, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's some really cool psychology going on. And it's not just about those happy chemicals, it's about meeting some really fundamental human needs and motivations.
Ooh, okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Well, one thing is that celebrating these small wins, it kind of taps into our need to feel competent. Like we all want to feel like we can do things and that we're effective, you know? And when we take the time to recognize what we've done, even the little things, it reinforces that feeling of competence.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like you're building up this proof that you are capable,
Right.
one small win at a time.
Exactly. And that proof helps you build self-efficacy, which is basically how much you believe in your ability to succeed. And tons of research shows that self-efficacy is like this key ingredient for motivation and persistence and bouncing back from setbacks.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you believe in yourself, the more likely you are to actually do it.
Exactly. And celebrating those small wins is like food for that belief system. You're giving yourself concrete evidence to back up that positive self-image.
I love that. It's like we're training our brains to look for the good stuff and see ourselves as people who can achieve things.
Yeah, and that shift in how you think about yourself can have these ripple effects in all parts of your life, your relationships, your work, your health, your overall well-being. It's like creating this upward spiral.
Okay, so we've got competence and self-efficacy. Anything else going on here psychologically?
For sure. Celebrating small wins also taps into our need for autonomy. Like we all want to feel like we have control over our lives and the choices we make. And when we set goals and work towards them, we're exercising that autonomy.
I see. It's like we're the ones in charge of our journey,
Yeah.
and celebrating those milestones along the way reminds us that we're the ones making it happen.
Exactly. And that feeling of being in control is so motivating. It gives you a sense of purpose and direction, makes you feel like you're not just along for the ride, but you're actually driving.
That's so powerful. So you're saying it's not just about what you achieve, but it's about the whole process of taking control and making your own path.
Yes, it's about owning that journey and celebrating every step of the way.
I love that. It's not just about getting to the destination. It's about enjoying the ride.
Absolutely. And speaking of journeys, that makes me think of another big psychological factor, our need for connection with others.
Okay, now I'm really interested. How does celebrating small wins relate to our relationships?
Well, think about it. Humans are social creatures. We do better when we feel like we belong and have a community. And when you share your wins with other people, no matter how small they might seem, it strengthens those bonds.
Like you're inviting people to celebrate with you and be part of what you're doing.
For sure. And when other people acknowledge and celebrate what you've done, it validates your efforts and reinforces that sense of belonging. It makes you feel seen and appreciated.
And that can be super motivating, right? Knowing that you have people who support you and are cheering you on can make a world of difference.
Totally. And it's not just about receiving support, it's about giving it too.
Right.
When we celebrate other people's wins, we're making those connections stronger and creating a more positive environment for everyone.
It's like we're all in this together, lifting
Yeah.
each other up and celebrating each other's successes.
Precisely. And that feeling of shared purpose and celebrating together can be really powerful, especially when you're working on a team.
Right. We talked about this a little before, but it's worth saying again. When you celebrate wins as a team, it builds camaraderie, boosts morale, and you end up being more productive and successful.
Exactly. You're creating this culture where everyone feels valued and appreciated, and celebrating small wins just becomes a normal part of how you work together.
Okay, so we've talked about competence, self-efficacy, and connection.
Mm-hmm.
But before we move on, I want to go back to something you said earlier about preventing burnout. How does celebrating small wins help with that?
That's a great question, especially these days when everything is so fast-paced and it's easy to feel overwhelmed and burnt out. Celebrating those small wins can kind of protect you from that burnout because it
Yeah.
gives you these regular doses of positive reinforcement and motivation.
It's like giving yourself permission to pause and appreciate what you've accomplished instead of always pushing for the next thing.
Right. It's about shifting your focus from what you haven't done yet to what you have done, no matter how small it seems. And just changing your perspective like that can be really refreshing and give you more energy.
It's like you're reminding yourself that you are making progress, even if it's not always super obvious or dramatic.
Yeah. And that recognition can help you stay motivated, stay engaged, and be more resilient when you face challenges. It's all about finding a sustainable way to achieve your goals, one that includes celebrating those small wins along the way.
I love that. It's about finding that balance between pushing for excellence and recognizing what you've done, no matter how small.
Exactly. And that balance is key to avoiding burnout and having a healthy, sustainable approach to work and just life in general.
Okay, so celebrating small wins is great for motivation, building resilience, and preventing burnout. But how do we make sure those small wins actually lead to bigger things? How do we connect those seemingly small things to our big goals?
That's where SMART goals come in, which the Harvard article talks about too. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound.
Oh yeah, I've heard of SMART goals, but to be honest, I sometimes have trouble actually using them. It can feel kind of overwhelming.
I get it. It can seem like a lot to keep track of, but once you break it down, it's pretty straightforward. And the best part is that SMART goals are made to help you reach those big goals by breaking them into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay, so let's break it down. How do you actually set a SMART goal?
Sure, let's say your big goal is to learn a new language. A SMART goal might be to learn 50 new vocabulary words in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, I see how that's specific and you can measure it.
Yeah.
But how do we know if it's attainable and realistic?
That's where you have to be honest with yourself about how much time and energy you have. If you only have 30 minutes a day to study, setting a goal of learning 100 words in a week might not be realistic.
Right. It's about finding that balance between challenging yourself and setting yourself up for success.
For sure. And the time-bound part is super important because it gives you a sense of urgency and keeps you on track. Having a deadline helps you prioritize what you're doing.
Okay, so specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. I think I'm getting it. But even with SMART goals, it's still easy to get distracted or lose momentum, right? What are some things we can do to stay motivated and on track?
The article has some awesome tips for keeping that momentum going. And I love how practical and relatable they are. One thing they emphasize is learning from each step you take. It's not just about checking boxes, it's about thinking about your progress, figuring out what worked and what could be better.
That's such a good point. It's like you're turning each small win into a chance to learn something, which can help you get even better in the future.
Exactly. They also say it's important to have fun along the way. If you're just constantly grinding and pushing yourself without any joy, it's going to be way harder to stay motivated.
Totally. It's like those people who are obsessed with hustle culture.
hmm
It's all about working yourself to the bone, and that's just not sustainable.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between effort and enjoyment. If you can make the process itself fun, you'll be much more likely to stick with it.
And that brings us to another tip from the article, getting support when you need it. We all need help sometimes, right?
Absolutely. Whether it's friends, family mentors, coworkers, or even a professional coach, having people to support you can make a huge difference.
It's like you're building your own personal cheerleading squad. People who are there to encourage you, challenge you, and help you stay accountable.
Exactly. And don't underestimate how powerful it is to share your wins with those people. Their positive feedback and encouragement can really keep you going.
Okay, so we've got learning from each step, having fun, and getting support. What else can we do to stay on track?
The article also talks about how important it is to change your perspective when you need to. Sometimes when you feel stuck or discouraged, just looking at the situation in a different way can make a huge difference.
So true. It's like that saying, change your thoughts, change your life.
Exactly. It's about shifting your focus from the negative to the positive, from what's not working to what is working.
And of course, we can't forget about distractions. We all have them, right? Social media, emails, text messages, that pile of laundry calling your name.
It's a never-ending battle. But the article has some good tips for minimizing those distractions, like setting boundaries, scheduling specific work time, and creating a space where you can really focus.
It's like you're making this special space for your goals where you can concentrate and make progress without all those distractions bombarding you.
Yeah. And that's essential if you want to stay focused and achieve those big goals.
Okay, so we've talked about SMART goals and ways to stay motivated. But there's one more piece I want to talk about, and it's something we touched on before. The context of this article, it's from Harvard Summer School, right?
That's right. And I think that context is important because it connects to this bigger idea of always learning and growing. Harvard Summer School is all about helping students learn valuable skills that they can use in their future, whether that's college, a career, or just life in general.
So in a way, celebrating those small wins during those summer programs is like a miniature version of the bigger journey of learning and achieving things throughout your life.
Exactly. It's about building those habits and ways of thinking that will help you no matter what you do in life.
I love that. It's about embracing the journey, celebrating those small wins along the way, and using those experiences to keep growing and learning.
Precisely. And that's something we can all take away from this conversation, no matter what our backgrounds or goals are.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, from the psychology of celebrating small wins to the actual strategies for doing it. We've looked at this from all angles. But before we wrap up, I want to make sure we bring it all back to you, the listener.
Great idea. It's all about making this information useful and relevant to your own life.
Exactly. So what's the big takeaway here? What's the one thing you want listeners to remember from this deep dive?
I think the main thing to remember is that celebrating small wins, it's not just about feeling happy for a minute or getting little rewards. It's a really powerful way to build motivation resilience and ultimately be more successful in everything you do.
Exactly. It's about noticing and appreciating those little steps that we often miss. But they're so important for reaching your full potential.
And it's something that can help anyone no matter what their goals are.
For sure. Whether you're like a student trying to get good grades, or a professional who wants to move up in their career, or just someone who wants to feel better overall.
Yeah.
The things we've talked about today can apply to anything you want to achieve.
It's really about changing how you see things and recognizing that even those tiny victories are worth celebrating.
Because those celebrations,
Yeah.
no matter how small, they keep you motivated and moving forward toward your bigger goals.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a question to think about.
Ooh, I love a good question to think about. What is it?
What's one small win you can celebrate today? And how will you celebrate it?
That's a great one. It really makes you think about all those little victories we don't always pay attention to.
Take some time to think about what you've done. Notice your effort and give yourself the credit you deserve.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy or complicated. Even just acknowledging that you've done something good can make a difference.
Maybe it's finally finishing something you've been putting off, or making a healthy choice, or just taking a few minutes for yourself to relax and recharge.
Whatever it is, take a moment to enjoy that win and let it give you the energy to keep going.
Because those small wins, when you celebrate and acknowledge them, they can help you achieve amazing things.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into the power of celebrating small wins.
It's been great talking about this with you, and I hope you've gotten some useful ideas that you can use in your own life.
Remember, every step you take, no matter how small, it's worth celebrating.
So go out there, embrace those small wins, and see how they change your journey as you work toward your biggest goals.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive with another interesting topic to explore.